we saw Yozo's page or the Kurasu page. We saw the videos. We learned more about the brand and thought right away how well Kurasu would do in the UAE. And so we reached out to
Yeah.
Yozo, and the first contact was simply, hey, man, let's have a conversation. I'd love to learn more about you and how you've built Kurasu when it is today. And we can talk a bit about ourselves here in the UAE and what we've built respectively and see if there's a way we can find the intersection whereby Kurasu comes here. And so that first call was a year
July.
ago.
Yeah. It's very interesting because we always talked about doing something, and there's so many coffee shops in Dubai, as you well know.
Yeah.
We're
Word.
thinking it's too saturated. There's too many good coffee shops. The thing is that there's too many good ones. But then we saw the brand on YouTube and we were like, this is a really good brand.
If you're starting or growing your business in these volatile times in coffee and you need a little extra support, our scope of business advisory services may be just what you need. Join one of our hugely successful mastermind groups for support in a group setting, or send us an email to discuss our one-on-one consulting and business advisory services, where we'll work with you one-on-one to solve specific problems in your coffee business. All our services come with a 100% money-back guarantee. So send us an email at support@mapperforward.org and let us know how we can help you today.
Welcome to the Mapper Forward Middle East podcast, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 1 of a brand new series, one that I'm very, very excited for. I'm welcoming to the podcast for the first time, actually, David Zabinsky and Valeria Garcia from Kurasu DXB. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us, Lee. We're honored to be here.
The honor is mine. You guys have the trophy for serving me my top 1 and top 2 coffees that I've had in all of the UAE. So thank you for that delicious and delightful experience. It was really fun meeting you guys for the first time. It was fun because, one, you didn't know that I was in the coffee industry, and I came into Kurasu and I wanted to sit down and have a coffee, and there weren't any tables free. And David could not go out of his way enough to find me a place to sit, and my friend Alana. So I knew right away, even before I tasted the coffee, that this was going to be a wonderful experience. And then the coffee arrived, and no fanfare, nobody made 15 coffees to get it to me. It was just a delightful experience. So congratulations on Kurasu Dubai. It's beautiful.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you.
That means the world. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Folks, in this series, we're talking about how to open a globally recognized specialty coffee brand in the UAE. And I would encourage you, if you are looking to find out more after this series about Kurasu, on the Global podcast, there is a series with the founder of Kurasu, Yozo, and it is excellent. It is really, really excellent. So that is also a fantastic series. In this episode, we're going to talk about the process of bringing a new franchise to Dubai. And as we start that conversation, I'd love you guys to introduce yourselves individually. We'll start with you, Valeria, and tell us about how you kind of ended up in the situation where this was what you did.
So my background is law. I am a corporate lawyer, or I was practicing corporate law, and I've been in the UAE for over 7 years now. So all my time in the UAE, I practiced law, and my background is Spanish. So I'm Colombian American, but then moved to Spain, studied law there, and I moved to Dubai, and is where I met David, which is my now fiance. And he's very entrepreneurial. Since the day I met him, he already had his own business. And I don't know, the past 7 years, we've been talking about doing something together, and it evolved into being Kurasu, which is where we are now, and we're very happy about that.
And what was your relationship with coffee before?
Yeah, I think we're just coffee aficionados since.
Okay,
yeah.
so you were drinking coffee before?
Yes, for sure. I'm Colombian,
okay,
so I've been drinking coffee since I'm a little girl.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And what about you, David?
So I've been in Dubai for over 10 years now. The joke I make is I don't know adulthood anywhere else in the world other than adulthood in Dubai. And that's because I
Nice.
moved here from the States 3 days after I graduated university. So I'm from
Oh,
both New
wow.
York and Boston, was raised between both cities originally. But in May of 2015, I made Dubai home and I haven't looked back since. As
Yeah, wow.
Val mentioned, I am indeed, for better or worse, a self-proclaimed entrepreneur. Found myself accidentally falling into the diamond trade back in 2018, which is a story for another time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then got into food, beverage, and entertainment again, almost by accident in 2022. We connected with the folks that founded Five Iron Golf
Uh-huh.
out of the States. And in short, we're not here to talk about golf. Five Iron Golf is indoor golf club by day, party by night. And given how big Dubai is, or how big golf rather is in Dubai and how freaking hot it is 6 months a year, we thought an indoor golf club by day, party by night would do quite well here. And we launched that.
We say this as it's 45 degrees outside.
Exactly right. And so we launched that in 2024, about a year ago now. Now, to answer your question, how we got into coffee, yes, originally Valeria and I were simply coffee aficionados. We had no experience in the trade commercially as a business. We would go from roastery to coffee shop in Dubai and get beans and make our own cold brew here, our own filter coffee here at home in the morning, and every single day start our morning off with a homemade brew, until in our YouTube searches every morning while having our coffee stumbled across the Kurasu page. And
Yeah.
I can,
So that was how you got introduced to Kurasu, is through YouTube.
it was so,
Wow, interesting.
as Val and I enjoy our coffees in the morning, pre-Kurasu DXP, we'd find ourselves looking up coffee shop tours. If there are two things that we love together, it's drinking coffee and traveling. And so what better way to
Yeah.
satiate those two yearnings or loves than by watching coffee shop tours on YouTube, where you get to explore different coffee shops around the world. And at one point, the powers that be had suggested a page called Kurasu on our YouTube homepage, and we watched. And funny enough, the first Kurasu video we saw had nothing to do with Kurasu Kyoto, but instead had everything to do with Yozo, the founder, who we all know very well, exploring specialty coffee shops in Chicago. He was there for
No
an
shit.
exhibition. And so he had taken a
Wow.
while there, exploring the different coffee shops in Chicago. We fell in love with Yozo, then explored the page, learned more about the brand, and then I can continue the story.
Yeah, please do. Tell us how, like, you get from there to being the owners of a franchise.
So, like Val mentioned, for the 7 years that we've been together, for many of those 7 years, we've talked about doing something together. That's been a dream of ours, was to start to get into business together. And so we saw Yozo's page, or the Kurasu page. We saw the videos. We learned more about the brand and thought right away how well Kurasu would do in the UAE. And so we reached out to Yozo, and the first contact was simply, hey, man, let's have a conversation. I'd love to learn more about you and how you've built Kurasu when it is today. And we can talk a bit about ourselves here in the UAE and what we've built respectively, and see if there's a way we can find the intersection whereby Kurasu comes here. And so that first call was a year
July.
ago.
Yeah. It's very interesting because we always talked about doing something, and there's so many coffee shops in Dubai, as you well know.
Yeah.
We were
Word.
thinking it's too saturated. There's too many good coffee shops. The thing is that there's too many good ones. But then we saw the brand on YouTube and we were like, this is a really good brand.
There's
We fell
nothing
in love
like
with the brand, and we
this.
fell in love with him traveling and exploring coffee, the industry, seeing how he loved the community, how everyone is helping each other. It's not only one isolated coffee shop. It's the whole supply chain. So that's very special. So that caught us, caught our eye. And yeah, I thought
You know what's
big
Go ahead, Zap.
for us to even contact him. I'm like, this brand is, oh my God. And David's worth a shot. And yeah.
Yeah, he said on the series that I did with him, we talked, obviously you guys have heard it, we talked about you guys, and he said, what I loved about them is that they understood Kyoto. They came, they spent time in Kyoto, they understood Kurasu from its founding. And I guess when you say, Val, that, you know, there's the market saturated, why would anybody open up a store here in Dubai? I often say that this market is saturated with businesses. It's not saturated with the right businesses.
Right. Well said.
Well said.
And the coffee industry globally is saturated. We don't need more coffee shops. We need more good coffee shops. And good isn't just like what product you're offering and what, you know, who is the baristas. It's about, do you understand the whole supply chain? And 2025 has come to school our whole industry on that. 2026, I think, is going to be an even bigger beast, but we'll see what comes from that. So what happens next? You call Yozo, you say, let's chat, and then what happens?
So from there, we went back and forth and kind of volleyed ideas between one another. We created a WhatsApp group with his team in Kyoto, and again, just exchanging ideas, more brainstorming out loud. I don't think either of us really realized how serious we were about Kurasu coming to Dubai until, and Yozo mentions this on the show with you, Lee, is he had proposed that we visit Kyoto and meet his team in October of last year. And I think 24 hours later, our flights to the hotels were booked.
Yeah, he's such a smart guy, isn't he? He's like, all right, let's see how serious these guys are. And you guys went, okay.
So that was 4 months, I suppose, between our first call and meeting in person.
Wow.
And I think as soon as we touched down in Osaka, took the train to Kyoto and met Yozo and his team, I think I can speak for both of us. We knew it felt right.
Yeah.
From visiting their Ibisagawa shop, which, by the way, there's not a single Marzocco. Everything is hand brewed.
So special.
Which is such a cool experience. To then visiting their roastery and then their head office and then going to Kyoto Stand, which is the original Kurasu in Kyoto, which is nestled right next to the Kyoto train station. And you just get this beautiful tourists and locals
everywhere,
every corner of the planet. And you get that typical urban coffee shop buzz balanced with the Kyoto Japanese tranquility. It's just beautiful.
Wow.
We fell in love and thought we would do whatever it took to ensure we could work together and bring what he had built so beautifully in Japan to Dubai.
Yeah, I think that first meeting at HQ with the whole team, it didn't feel real until that moment when everyone was talking, okay, so where do we take it from here? And we're like, we're ready.
We're ready. Wow. Yeah. I got to ask you, can we go before you get on the plane to go to Kyoto? What's the conversations? I'm a big fan of helping people understand what it feels like before you're about to do a hard thing. What's the conversations before you know you're about to do the hard thing between you guys?
Should I start?
Please.
Yeah, go.
I feel since David had experience before of opening other franchises here in the UAE, he's less scared or more, let's just do it. He doesn't think about it that much, but I was thinking, oh my God, I can't believe it. Are we going to just go and drop everything here? I was still working at my corporate job. I didn't tell him I was leaving because I could work remotely. So I had that freedom. Then it was a bit scary, and it was thinking,
wow,
I can't miss this opportunity though. Like, this is what we've been talking about. This is what I've been wanting to do.
Yeah.
I just have to go for it. But of course, like, David inspires me and just says, let's do it. And that was my experience. And I didn't feel real until I got there. But I booked the tickets and we're like, okay.
And what about you, David? That's wild.
Yeah. So
I love that.
I'll answer it in two ways. Number one, can I curse? What's the rule?
Yeah, fuck yeah. Hello. Have you met Mapple Forward?
So this will be the only F-bomb I drop. At least in this episode, perhaps the number two. There is an expression to which I subscribe almost blindly and loyally, and that is, you're either all in or in the fucking way.
Yeah,
And
I
apply that to every pursuit.
I love
Be that business, be that in the gym, be that with friends, be that with my fiance. Similar to moderation is for cowards, right? And so
Yeah.
once I have conviction or a belief, for example, in this case, Kurasu, I will do whatever it takes to ensure that manifests into what it possibly can. Now, again, begs the question, why did we have so much conviction in bringing Kurasu to Dubai? To your point, what Dubai needs is not more coffee shops. It needs more good coffee shops. Now, the palette in Dubai for really high quality coffee is wildly sophisticated. From Emiratis,
it really
expats, and everybody in between. There's a really sophisticated coffee palette in this city and more broadly in this country. There's also, as I'm sure you know, an affinity amongst Emiratis and expats in the UAE for anything and everything Japanese.
Word.
And so when you have these two tailwinds, so to speak, where people love good coffee, people love anything and everything Japanese, and aside from Arabica, which is perhaps another conversation, no one's really yet married the two. That was quite a strong impetus to think Kurasu would certainly work. Let's go all in.
You know, it's interesting you mention Arabica because Arabica is everywhere here. Like people who haven't been to Dubai won't know that, but it is everywhere here. But as I said in the series with Yozo, I can't see those two things, those two brands being anywhere near the same. No disrespect to Arabica, but it's a very commercialized kind of business, and it's doing very well here and people see it. But Kurasu feels authentically Japanese. There's very, very much that Japanese vibe in your cafe.
We'd like to think
so.
Yeah. And we appreciate you discerning between the two, because to us, it'd be like saying McDonald's and Ruth's Chris are the same because they both meet from the US.
Right. And no disrespect to Shoji-san, like none at all. It's just that they're different brands. Right, exactly. They've been very successful here. Very successful here. So I want to ask you guys, from the moment you guys decide, yes, we're going to do this, what's the process then to say, okay, we're going to do this? How do you open the business here in Dubai? How do you become franchisees?
So we built a business model and a business case for Yozo to take a look at with his team. I remember early on, I was hyper conservative in our model. Just to be on the safe side, I'm very much of the belief that you ought to under promise and over deliver. And again, without trying to paint too broad a picture here, generally speaking, Japanese businessmen and Japanese businesswomen are more conservative than those like you who subscribe to you're either all in or in the effing way. And so to try and appease this idea, I was quite conservative. And it was Yozo, Lee, it was Yozo who had said, hey man, I think we can be a bit more aggressive on this model.
Nice.
So to have that confidence was quite a lot. So once we had built this model, we then had to go on a wild goose hunt to find a space. Because
you picked a cracker of a space. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. So as they say in real estate or in retail, location isn't something, it's
location,
everything, location, and keep repeating it ad nauseum. And we knew to bring a brand as special as Kurasu here, in its first entrance to the UAE, we ought to ensure the location be really special. And that was difficult. We spent how many months?
Honestly, I think we started looking for a unit since the moment we booked our flights.
Yeah.
Or even maybe
Sure.
before that. We were thinking,
Wow.
honestly, that was the trickiest part, finding the correct unit.
Yeah.
And then once we found the unit, we had to sprint because
Yeah.
a
Wow.
timeline to open. So yeah, the trickiest was the unit, and so happy with the one that we chose.
Yeah.
Was
And you should be, because it's perfect. Like, it's easy to get to. It's amongst the footfall is there. It's stunning. Let's be real. But this leads us into, this is a great place for us to finish off this episode, because in our next episode we're going to talk about getting to day one of launch. So this will be a great place for us to end this. So join us in the next episode, folks. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day.
This episode is part of a 5-part series produced by Mapper Forward. Check the full playlist and guest details in the show notes, as well as how you can support our work in the coffee industry. Become a premium YouTube subscriber, explore our Patreon and any brands we've partnered with to bring you this podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us grow our audience.